Hi everybody, it's Alyce-Kay Ruckelshaus and I'm here for the next video in making our Abraham journal or Abraham junk journal, whichever one you want to call it is fine. And I'm really excited because today we're going to start working on pockets and other things that we'll be putting into our journals. And so I want to show you several different methods that you can use. I've already cut some of my pockets because I figured you didn't have to sit here watching me do that, but I'm going to cut some to show you some different ways. And I do have some notes here because I don't want to wander a lot, because this may end up being kind of a long video because there's no way to really cut it up. So if you want to watch it in parts, you can, but I wouldn't start working on anything until you've watched this whole video. So I printed out a bunch of the pictures and designs that I showed you in our last video, and I've printed those out to specific sizes because I think I explained this last time, but I'm not sure. We have, you know, a certain size of pages here, and so our pages are just, I think, 5.5 inches across. Yeah, 5.5 inches across because they're half a sheet of paper because they're folded in half. So you don't want your pockets to be 6 inches because they wouldn't fit on the page. So I usually go for any place from 2 inches to about 4.5 at the very, very most, because your binding is going to be right here in the middle. You don't want to get too close to the binding. It'll make it hard to bind, and it will also make it hard to put anything into the pockets. So about 4 inches to 4.5 inches is really the ideal for a large pocket. Okay, so I've sized these things. So if you're printing out from my PDF, those things are already in the right sizes. Now I do have some things that I made bigger, like these, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to either cut these in half, or I'm going to fold them, or I'm going to use them in another way, and I'll show you how I'm going to be doing that in future videos. But that's why there's a variety of sizes. And again, if you want to resize these, you can just go to Pixabay and print those yourself, because I don't think that you can change it on my PDF, unfortunately. But you can print them out from Pixabay. And if I can figure out how to share my desktop with you, I used to be able to do it, but for some reason the program's not working now. But if I can figure out how to do that, then I'll insert a video showing you actually how to do that yourself, because it'll be really helpful. And let me tell you, if you make this junk journal, you're going to be addicted and you're going to want to make more. So hey, and that's another thing is I print out. I don't sit there and go, okay, I need 20 pockets. I print out a whole bunch of pockets so that I can decide as I'm working on it, because I know that anything that I print out and I don't use in this journal, I'll end up using someplace else. Okay, so there's several different ways that you can cut these out. I know that sounds like such a basic thing, but you're going to get different results depending on how you do it. And so what I'm doing for this journal is I am actually using my cutting board, and so that's pretty self-explanatory. There are much better cutting boards than this nowadays. They have ones that actually slide rather than chopping like this, and so you don't have to worry so much about cutting your fingers off. So if you're going to get a cutting board, then I will link one in the description box below, one that I've seen a lot of junk journalers use, and one that I would like if I was going to get a cutter. But for now, I already have this one, so this is what I'm using, and it's good enough. It works fine. So you can cut them and save these scraps. Okay, anything that's over, like this would probably be like the narrowest that I would say. Where's my ruler? This is about 2 inches, or maybe even like 1.5 inches. If it's like 1.5 inches or wider, then I save it. In this stack here someplace, I have a whole bunch of scraps. See all these scraps that I saved from when I was cutting stuff. Now there's going to be a lot of really thin pieces too, like these. You can save those if you want. There are things that you can do with those, but I throw them away because I already have a whole lot. But that's one of the things about kind of the junk journal culture, is that we try to use everything and we try not to waste things. In fact, it's kind of a point of pride that you use up your stuff. And I guess maybe that's also one of the reasons why they're called junk journals is because you try to use up the things that you have. You know, if you've been crafting for long, or if you sew, then you know that you have quite a stash of fabric and papers and other materials that you just hold on to. Sometimes it's like, oh, I may never find this again, so I don't want to use it except for the very perfect thing, and then you die and your kids have all these craft things to sort through. And so kind of the idea is using that up, and there are actually a lot of challenges in groups, in junk journaling groups, to use up your stash. And so that's kind of fun. And there is really seriously a whole subculture of junk journalers, and it can be really fun. Anyway, so I'm cutting all these, and we'll work on the edges later, but this is one way to do it, is to cut it. And of course you can also cut with scissors. You're welcome to do that. I don't usually do that because I cannot cut in a straight line to save my life, and so I don't like to cut with scissors. But you could also, if you have any kind of fancy scissors like this, I have these scallop edge scissors, you can cut with those if you want. Now that takes quite a bit of time, but maybe if you watch TV or watch movies or something, you can sit in front of the TV and you can cut a bunch of things that way. And it's kind of nice to have those fancy edges, especially like at the top of a pocket or something, so you can always do that. Okay, now another way, and this is what I would really prefer to do for this journal, but I just don't have time. Another way is to tear. And there are a few different ways that you can tear. Okay, so like in this journal, I just free tore. So you can see how ragged these edges are, and it does make it look really old and used and well loved and everything. So I just tore, like this. I just tore along the edges, okay? And sometimes it wasn't very straight, and that's fine. Okay, another way that you can tear is that you can fold it and crease it, and you're going to get a little bit of a straighter tear. And if you tear several pages at once, that's a good way to do it. But again, it's not going to be super even, and that's fine if that's the look that you're trying to get. Okay, like I was in this particular journal, which is about East Tennessee. Okay, now the other way that you can tear, and this is what I would do for this journal personally if I had time, is you can use a ruler. You want a thin ruler. If you use a thick ruler, it's not going to work as well. So I got this ruler, a package of 3 for $1 at the Dollar Tree. I actually went and bought another whole package because I love these. And so you just put it at the edge of where you want to tear, and you have to kind of hold it down really hard. And sometimes it's hard to get it started. But once you get it started, it tears like that, and you have a nice torn edge. And then we're going to use distressing ink on those edges, which I'll show you just how it looks. I'm not going to show you how to do it so much, but just that you can see how cool it looks when you have that torn edge. See right here, I put the distressing ink on this half, but not on this half. And you see how it looks just so great. And then when you put it up against the coffee stained paper, this isn't coffee stained paper, but you get the idea that it really shows up nicely and it defines it. So that's what I would recommend if you have the time. Again, like if you're sitting in front of the TV or something. I'm going to use up the ink that I put on this. I don't like to waste it. If you're sitting in front of the TV or something, then that's a good way to use your time, is tearing and distressing. Okay, so I would personally cut or tear at least 20 pockets. So if you're using my PDF, then go through and choose about 20 of those that are pocket sized or bigger, and print those out. I mean, like, I didn't even print out that whole PDF. There's way too much on there. It would use a ton of ink and a ton of paper, so I just chose the ones that I think I might use. I probably printed out 50 pages or so, so maybe, I don't know, maybe 75 pockets. But like I said, I'll use them in other journals if I don't use them here. And some of these we can use as journaling cards also. So, just print out, I'd say, at least 20 pockets to start out with, and get those either cut or torn. And then I also wanted to talk about keeping the scraps. Okay, so I mentioned that you want to keep the scraps. And see how I've cut some out. I don't try to get it cut exactly on the line when I'm using my paper cutter because it would just take forever to line up. So there's these little edges here. I can cut those off or I can just leave them. And probably what I'm going to do with these scraps is I'm going to coffee dye them. In a week or two, I'm going to need to do some more coffee dyeing. And so I'll just take all of these scraps, including the torn ones, and I'll coffee dye them. Now I've used up all of my scraps like that, but I have some of these that I had cut from 3x5 cards and coffee dyed, and so this is what they look like. And the papers come out looking pretty much the same, except they're just not as stiff. And then, where is it? Oh, I brought out someplace here an example of one of the things you can do. Well, I don't know what I did with it. Okay, oh, here it is. Okay, so one of the things I like to do with these scraps is make them into little notepads that I then slip into the journal, like in the belly band or something. And what you do is you just take, like, 3 or 4 of these scraps, try to find ones that are, relatively close in size, but they don't have to be exactly, like, see, these ones are different. And I would probably just go ahead and tear this one right here, and then fold it in half and staple it at the top like this. Okay, staple it at the top, and then I glue fabric over the top of it and back, and then I might put on like a button or a rosette or some lace or something like that. We will be making some of these, so you don't have to like go, oh my gosh, what did she just do? I'm just kind of showing you so that you know why you're saving these scraps. And there are a lot of other ways that we can use these too. We will use them. So save those scraps, please, please, please. Okay, so there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with those. So another way that we'll use them is if we use any of these cards, any of these, like let's say that I don't use this as a pocket and I decide instead that I want to use it in a journaling card. We could just use it like this, but first of all, it'll go better in our journal because the paper is coffee dyed. It'll look better in our journal if it's not white on the back, if it's coffee dyed like this. So some of these scraps that we've coffee dyed, we can cut and then we can glue to the back or sew to the back of these pages, which also just makes them more sturdy, and it makes it more of a journaling card rather than a journaling paper. And I think especially because this is a Bible study, it's something that you really are going to want to keep and you're going to be working in quite a bit. You want it to be as sturdy as possible, and you want it to last as long as possible. When I'm making junk journals, and again, in case you didn't see the video about the genre of junk journals, it's a genre. It's not saying that what's inside of it is junk. In fact, junk journals will cost a whole lot more money to buy than a regular journal. These can go for anywhere from, I've seen them for like $15, but they're just plain like this, up to over $300. Okay, so they aren't junk. It's just the name of the genre, and there are a lot of different reasons for that, as I've explained, but it's not saying that what's in it is junk. In fact, what you're keeping in a junk journal, you're keeping because you treasure it and you want other people to treasure it. By making it interactive, like look at this. Okay, this journal I'm almost finished with. I have a few papers in front because I'm still working on it. But this is about East Tennessee. I haven't written in it. I'm just making the journal itself. But see, with all these little, here's a journaling card that I've made with a map. Okay, with all these little things that you can write on and do stuff in. This envelope actually opens up so that you can write on it. And we'll be putting stuff like this in our Abraham journal. Or here's another journaling card that you can write on. And here's one of those Rita Donnelly flips that I was showing you that you can write on. And then of course you can write on the page. And if this is lighter colored, you can write on that. You can write on the sky here and stuff right here. It's more interactive, and so it's not only fun for you to do and more creative than just a regular journal, but it also is fun for a future generation to discover and to find all these little pockets and hiding places and and various things that you've written on, and maybe, you know, something that they don't see at first glance, but they discover later. um, you know, it's a lot more interesting. And so in making these junk journals, your Abraham junk journal, for example, I hope that you're not just thinking of it as something for you, but that you're thinking of it as something for future generations that you're going to pass on. When you die, your kids are going to find this, and hopefully they're going to fight over it. I don't really want them to fight, but you know what I mean. Hopefully they're all going to want it. Okay, so having mentioned coffee dyeing the scraps, when you finish with your scraps, if you want to go ahead and coffee dye those, we talked about those in other videos, and I've linked videos on YouTube that you can go to for coffee dyeing instructions. I would go ahead and do that so that you have those ready to work with. And you'll see me sometimes with my fingernails looking all brown and everything. That's because I've been coffee dyeing. And my husband just got me at the Easter sales some Easter egg dye that I'm going to try dyeing papers and cheesecloth and lace different colors. So I may have multicolored hands. But I just want to show you some other things that you can dye while you're at it. If you have lace edging, okay, I have white lace edging that I use someplace here. Here we go. Here's my white lace edging that I use for journals like the French industrial one that I showed you yesterday, or this one, because white just goes better in those. But then ones like the Abraham one, white lace would look funny, so I've coffee dyed lace. And when you're coffee dyeing your lace, if you lay it on the coffee dyed paper while it's drying, either air drying or in the oven, it will leave a lacy impression on the paper, which is really cool looking. So you can kind of experiment with that. And then another thing that you might want to coffee dye, because this really helps with making things look older, like for example here on this cover I have cheesecloth, coffee dyed cheesecloth that I've put in here that makes it look kind of torn and raggedy and old, so it makes it look really well loved. And I've got some here on the bottom so that it will hang out the bottom and make it look like, yeah, this is really old and well loved and it's been carried around a lot, even though it's really brand new. But I love to use cheesecloth all throughout. So this is my husband, he's the centerfold here. And here's the belly band. Oh, here's with one of these little notepads that I made. Okay, so that's in there. But I just, you know, I use that cheesecloth all throughout. And you can buy a package of cheesecloth like at Walmart. It's my husband found it in the fabric section before I have found it in the canning section. So look both places or ask somebody and, you know, they'll help you find it. But a small thing of cheesecloth, you can probably work on, I'd say probably about 15 or 20 journals using that. And then my husband just got me this huge package of cheesecloth for about $7 that I've just started using. Oh, here it is. So this one is like gigantic. This, I don't know, it'll last me the rest of my life probably. I don't know how I'll ever use this up, but so that's wonderful. But when you coffee dye those, again, when you dry them, either if you air dry or you put it in your oven, lay your coffee dyed cheesecloth out on your paper and smooth it down on your paper, because it will leave the impression of the cheesecloth. And let me see if I can find a page in here where I did that. Okay, so like here, do you see that little woven area right there? That's from cheesecloth. And here's some more with cheesecloth. And I did some with burlap in here too. Okay, now the way that I got these lines is I have a cookie cooling rack, not one that has like a coating on it. You don't want a plastic coating or anything, but just a metal one. And I laid these on that rack and smoothed them down, because where it's touching is where it's going to leave the lines. Okay, and you can kind of see there's also white lines from it going the other direction. And that way I've got lines on some of my pages, which will make it really easy for writing on. And so you can just try, you know, all kinds of things that you dry either on top of your paper, or let me see if I've got, or that you dry your paper on. Okay, like this, I have a metal card table that's got this design in it, and I just happened to lay this card and several others on that to dry, not realizing, because it was the first time I had coffee dyed, not realizing that it was going to leave this really cool design, which is really fun to have on it, for either using this just as a card by itself in my journal, or, you know, gluing it to the back of a picture or something that I'm going to use for a journaling card. So, so that's kind of your assignment for now, for this stage, is to choose out 20 pictures or designs that you want to use as pockets in your journal. And if you do more, that's actually better, because then you have something to choose from. Because, you know, I just go by whatever strikes me at the time. You know, it's like, do I like this better, or do I like something with this blue? I'm going for earth tones personally, so that's what most of the things in my PDF are, but I did try to include some things that would interest people who aren't as into earth tones. But for me, the earth tones, like this is a little too bright for me. The earth tones just fit with the coffee dyed paper and the whole Abraham theme to me. But, you know, you don't have to think of it as just about Abraham. This is about you. So, you know, if you just really love purples and pinks and oranges, you know, then you might like something more like this, and use that in your journal instead. You just want this to be something that's going to be pleasing to you, because you want it to really entice you to work in it. And you want to just, you don't want it to be a chore to be doing your classwork in your journal. You want to be like, oh wow, oh I can find this really cool pocket or something like that. You know, it's like, it just makes it so much more enjoyable and a lot more fun for you to do the journal, do the work in the journal, as well as making it, but, you know, do the class stuff in the journal, as well as for somebody else to find later. So it's just going to be fun. So here's your assignment for now before you watch the next video. You don't have to watch these videos as they come out. Do them in the order after you finish doing the stuff from the video before. Is to make at least 20 pockets, get them cut out or torn out, whatever you want to do. And then, this isn't exactly an assignment, but you're going to need to do this at some point, so I will do it soon. And that's to watch at least one of the videos about coffee dyeing and decide how you want to try doing it, and coffee dye your scraps and a few more pages if you haven't already coffee dyed pages for your journal. If you're coffee dyeing, if you don't want to coffee dye and you just want to use white pages, that's totally fine too. But if you're coffee dyeing, you might want to dye a few extra pages. I think I have 20 pages in here. I'll count and I'll write it down in the description, but I think I've got 20 pages in there, which makes 80 pages in the journal. Okay, coffee dye your scraps. If you want to use some cheesecloth, coffee dye that. If you want to use some lace, which I'm not sure whether I'll use lace in this journal or not. Abraham doesn't seem like a lacy kind of man to me, but I'm lacy, so I might include lace for myself. So I don't know, we'll see. So coffee dye your scraps, coffee dye a few extra pages, coffee dye some cheesecloth if you want to use that. If you want to coffee dye some string or yarn or something, you can. Oh, I mentioned that this glue that I really like, it's called The Ultimate, and it's by Crafter's Pick, and I'll put a link below. I get it on Amazon. It's really thick, and so it's hard to get it started even when it's full. But I have found that if I stick it in my ball of twine like that and just keep it in my ball of twine on my desk, that it's always ready for me to use. And so that works out really, really well. My twine is all coming unwound. Trying to think if there's anything else that I should tell you. I think that's it. That's all that I have on my list. So cool. All right, so let me know if you have any questions, and then when you're done with that, we can watch the next video. All right, I love you all. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.